I have the privilege today of introducing today's speaker, Jeff Lupinacci. Jeff has served as the Chief Talent Officer in multiple Fortune 500 organizations, such as Intel and Kimberly-Clark. It was during these 25 years that Jeff had kind of realized that there's something missing in the area of talent searches, executive talent searches, and HR consulting. And as a result of that revelation is when he started the organization Evolve HR Solutions. Jeff is a best-selling author. He's a frequent speaker in the HR industry and has been featured in many numerous industry publications. He is so popular, he has actually brought his own firm to film him today. I'm speaking of his wife, Molly. So thank you for being here today, Molly. And he tells me he has left his two fur babies, his doodles at home, that he speaks of frequently. Jeff we appreciate you being here, and with that, Jeff Lupinacci.
Thank you. All right, good morning. Hey, what if I told you that there was one activity that could ensure that your employees produce 300% more revenue per employee than the average S&P 500? Well, you know what? That activity is focus on talent. And talent is the one thing that is going to help your organization succeed and thrive over the next 5 years. You know, it's been a crazy time. We've heard a little bit of the craziness with the new administration and the legal environment, but it's been, for the last 5 years, it's been wild. AI, remote, hybrid, in office. We have changing values of the employee base. We have a new generation that's coming in that is completely different than previous generations. And some of y'all's organizations is probably 4 or 5 generations in the same workforce. And so we need, as HR professionals, to be thinking about the workforce differently than we have been in the past. I had the opportunity to work under Andy Grove when he made this quote, and I think that it is more appropriate now than when he said it back in the 90s. Things have changed pretty dramatically. And it used to be that we could be a either-or mindset, either technology or people. I can't tell you how many times I had leaders just say, well, just go hire some people. It's a whole lot cheaper to just add, throw people to do the work. And nowadays, it's a different kind of mindset altogether. And I'm going to maintain that we have the opportunity to shift our mindset and be the leaders going into the future that our organizations need. The great news is we have time to make a difference and lead our organizations into this bold new future. If we have the mindset of a both and, right? It's not an either or, it's both technology and human-centered. It's both flexibility and a little bit of structure, right? And it can be our superpower if we really establish that mindset. When I was a kid, I loved swing sets. I don't know, there was something about being, 8 years old and having that freedom. I almost feel like you're flying through the arc of the swing. And of course, much to my mom's chagrin, when I hit that forward swing and then launched myself out into the unknown, praying that I didn't break a leg. But there's a point in that swing set, in that motion, that I think is really appropriate for the place that we're in as human resources. There's that inflection point. When you hit that top point of that backward arc, you actually have to do two motions at the same time to be able to get that forward momentum into that forward arc. Well, you have to lean back, which seems totally unnatural when you're going backwards on a swing, but then you also have to kick your feet forward, and that will accelerate you through that arc. Well, you know what? That's what I think we need to do. Over the last, call it 20, 25 years, HR as a function, as an organization, has come such a long way. No longer are we a administrative back office organization. At least I think most of us hope that we're not. Most of us hope that our C-suite and our CEOs believe that HR is that strategic partner that is going to add value to the business and help the business grow. But you know what? We're at that inflection point, and we don't want to lose all the good that we've done for our organizations, for our industry. And so in this talk, I want us to lean back into the good things, the great things that we've put in place, some of the policies, some of the tools, but I also want us to kick forward and know that we have to evolve it a little bit. We have to adjust what we've done to really get that momentum into the future. So I want to start with kicking back a little bit. I love history. I've always loved history, and so I was taking a look at what's the evolution of work really been over these last 50 years. I certainly wasn't going to go all the way back to the 1930s and the Hawthorne of studies and whatnot, where HR really was birthed. But I wanted to take a look and lean back at the good things that HR has done, but also how has work really evolved so that we can really set our minds on what is it going to look like over the next few years. So if you look at the last 50 years, work has gone from a very manual, hierarchical, centralized function. HR really in the 70s was about industrial relations. And now we're in an environment where the world is our oysters. We're agentic AI. We have bots that we can leverage. We are remote. We are virtual. We have just some tremendous activities going on right now. Well, if you really look at this trend from the 70s to, let's call it 2010, the work itself didn't radically change. Well, maybe if you're in IT, but what we were doing was all about automation and efficiency and cost savings. And so you had the personal computer, and then you had fax machines and pagers, and then came along the BlackBerry, and then in 2008 the iPhone came in, and so that technology was really building on and making the work that we did a lot more efficient. Certainly in the year 2000, Y2K, all y'all are probably a little too young for that, but I lived through that thinking that the world was going to end at January 1st, 2000. And but what it certainly didn't end, but we did find that the internet and e-commerce and the whole transition to technology was going to accelerate. Well, once we hit 10 and that decade, we started seeing a lot more shifts. We certainly saw AI really coming in because, you know what? In that decade, you had Alexa and Siri really taking center stage as AI. That was where most of us interacted with that kind of technology. Who would have thought that we'd be where we are today? And if you really think about it, the roles of HR today that didn't exist even 10 years ago, for most companies, HR analytics. What about employee experience? Those are a couple of roles that are new for our industry. Certainly back in the day at Intel, Intel was 100,000 employees, so we had lots of data scientists and whatnot, but not so much in the HR space. So what I want to do is I want to now swing our feet forward a little bit, and I want to look at some of the really important talent shifts that we're seeing in our industries, in our markets. Because I really believe that work has fundamentally changed more in the last 5 years than really the last 50. That was driven a lot by the pandemic. With everyone realizing, we can work virtually, we can be remote. And actually in 2020, I would maintain that HR, it was probably the first time that holistically HR professionals were seen as the savior of most companies. Right? I remember that time from that mid-April when everything shut down and no one knew what was going on. I literally, for the next 3 months, I didn't take a single day off. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. I did take Easter off since we just had it last week. I took 1 day off in 3 months. I was the chief talent officer for a global company, and so trying to figure out all the different laws at every single company was challenging. Unfortunately, by the time we hit 2023, most CEOs forgot how great HR was in 2020 when they started realizing, we got to cut costs. HR's a cost center, right? And so that's where we have faced some real challenges for us. Now, the great news is going forward, it's not just about headcount anymore. It's about how do we build a workforce that's agile, that has the mindsets for the next 5 years. So I'm going to talk about 5 strategic talent shifts that we're going to see. The first one, and I'm purposefully starting with this, and it may be the most controversial. We have historically had a more traditional workforce, higher payroll, W-2, and now we're moving into a space where it's going to be a whole lot more human and digital collaboration. All right, who has listened to the news and heard, with AI we don't need HR anymore? Has anybody heard that? Yeah. I actually got into a bit of an argument with the CEO a couple of weeks ago who was like, well, I have no need for HR, and now with AI, I really don't need HR. You guys are worthless. And so it was a very spirited debate. We remain friends, but I think maybe I got him moved a little bit into the space of, HR is a strategic partner into this. But here we are with this opportunity to really reshape the workforce. And there's a new term that we've seen. It's called the third workforce. I'm going to maintain one of the things that HR professionals can do, certainly over the next 5 years, is embrace AI as a coworker. I know, it sounds kind of strange that automation or these chat bots or these AI agents could be considered a coworker. How many of you would love to have 2, 3, 4, 5 more HR professionals on your staff? Right? Yeah. Today, most HR leaders and HR organizations are overworked and under-resourced. Well, McKinsey has come out with a study that said, yeah, you know what? They think that upwards to 30% of HR's activities can be pushed over to AI, which is great news for us. Think of this, right? If we can offload 30% of the work of our overworked and stretched HR employees and allow them to focus on the strategic elements of what is going to really help the organization, that's a mindset shift. We shouldn't be afraid of our job. Now, of course, if your organization, if it's unfortunate that it's still considered very transactional, that could be concerning for sure. But for most organizations, it's an opportunity for us to lean in and figure out how do we create a whole ecosystem that not only has the first workforce, our traditional W-2 based employees. We already know how to manage the first and second workforce, which is contractors and freelancers and gig workers. I really engaged in the gig worker world back in 2022 when my CEO came to me and says, we really got to cut costs. And I'm like, oh, we don't have enough employees as it is. And there was starting to be this feeding frenzy because everyone was driving up wages because of demand, employee demand. And so I went into the gig work. And so we did a study in our organization and we figured out what are those roles and activities that we could go and outsource to someone who was very specialized in those activities. It was really easy in the IT space. But we dabbled with it in HR and some other realms. And instead of letting the business unit go and do what they wanted, I made sure that HR still thought of it as a workforce that we needed to oversee, that we should oversee because we were the best in line to be able to do that. So that was the second workforce. We know how to manage first and second workforce. So my charge to all of you is, well, let's embrace AI. Let's embrace this digital ecosystem and leverage it to our benefit and the benefit of the organization. This blended ecosystem is really, really important. So we need to kick forward into that. Now, what about some of the tools? How do we manage still? Well, you know what? There's some tools that we have used historically, whether you love them or not, they're good tools that we need to lean back into. Talent reviews, for example. Talent reviews, there's a lot written about them, but I think there's a value in really understanding who you have in your organization that are really delivering the value. Now, we need to kick forward and make some adjustments to that. So I maintain that in this world where we have more hybrid, maybe a lot more virtual, we need to really do a organization relationship, a network relationship mapping, right? Because there's studies that have been done that this relational networking of your employees, how far their networks go within the company as well as outside of the organization, the better, innovative, creative, more results those individuals are going to get. And so it's not just shouldn't just be a manager thinking, oh yeah, John's really good, so he's a top talent. But layer in some of these new capabilities that we now know are true signs of what top talent can really look like. And then there's leadership assessments. I'm a fan of leadership assessments. one of the fastest growing cottage industries are executive coaches, right? So there's a lot of folks out there that are now coaching leaders. In my book, The Talent Advantage, I have a leadership model, the creative leadership model, and so it'll give you a framework that you could use. And oh, by the way, if you give me your card or give Molly your card, I'd be happy to send you the assessment that I created for that. But as we lean back and leverage some of those tools, then we can kick forward and be prepared to have the right skills necessary to meet the challenges going forward. Now, speaking of skills, we used to be about headcount planning. We go, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Manager, you have a budget for a role, and it was a role, and now I think that we are in a point in time where it's no longer about a role or a title, but it's about the skills and capabilities that we need to go find. It is no longer about the titles, tenures, or traditions of an organization. It is what are those skills that are going to be transferable to where the organization is going. Now, the good news is the World Economic Forum just came out with a study that looked at what are the skills that are going to be really critical for employees to have and business to really leverage by 2030. And not surprising, what they found was those skills were the ones that were not going to be able to be transferred into an AI, a chatbot, or an agent, right? Analytical thinking. Now, I can tell you that one of the biggest gaps HR has as an industry is analytics. I talk to a lot of HR professionals, and every once in a while I'll get a search and they'll say, hey, we need this HR person to be well versed in Excel. And I'm thinking, okay, Excel's pretty standard. I can't tell you how many people that I come across. I'm like, well, okay, so how well do you know Excel? How well do you know pivot tables? Can you do a V lookup or an X lookup? And like, what? I have no idea. I do a capstone course of HR strategy and analytics at Baylor, and the students are flocking to this class because they realize that analytics is a critical component for HR. And so that would be my charge to this group, is make sure that your employees, your HR employees, are well versed in even the basics of Excel, because more and more companies are going to need to be leveraging that data. And the reality is, with AI, there's huge amounts of opportunities. I mean, I love putting things into AI and say, hey, analyze this for me. Give me your thoughts on where I can improve it. I actually did it for this presentation. But you need the people, you need your employees to understand what analytics really is and how to understand that. But also things like resilience and flexibility, agility. Resilience is probably the most underrated skill, especially for leaders right now. I'll talk about it in a minute, but boy, burnout is a big thing, and that resilience is huge. So, how do we lean back? How do we make sure that we have those agile talent strategies? Well, succession planning is a great tool if it's used. I know for, the first handful of years as I was trying to lead succession planning, it was a check the box exercise, right? The board said, hey, we need a succession plan for our executive team, and so you just threw up names that was like, yeah, they look good. no real thought about, do they have the skills, the capabilities? I had one opportunity where I mapped the critical roles across the whole network and looked at who were in the small, medium, large roles, and mapped what are those skills, what are those experiences, what are those capabilities for each individual, and what do we need to do to move them forward. And when I did that, we identified that there was someone in a small role that was this diamond in this rough, and we're like, oh wow, they're being wasted, and so we proactively moved them, and now they are actually a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. So I feel really good about playing a little bit of part in that. You know, talent maps are really good for us to look at what we have, what we need, and where we're going. You know, and as we think about what we have and what we need and what those skills are, and do we have enough people in the right roles? We went from a career ladder all the way up through call it the early 2000s, when all of a sudden companies realized, we got to cut costs, so we're going to cut out layers. So then, most of you probably remember, hey, it's not a career ladder anymore, it's a lattice or a jungle gym, right? With this idea where, okay, you know what, maybe you have to go down a little bit and go over before you go back up. The old game Chutes and Ladders. I don't know if it's still around. My kids are grown now. Maybe when my grandson gets old enough, I'll pick up. But that same concept that okay, we don't have enough roles to have that traditional ladder. We're gonna do things a little bit different. Well, you know what? We have an opportunity now where our employees, especially the younger generations, are thinking about a career portfolio, right? They're not as interested in titles as they are getting the right experience and exposure and putting in that basket of goods or baskets of skills. I want to learn this. I talk to a lot of 20-somethings that have no problem saying, okay, well, I'm gonna go do something different just because I want to try it. I want to see what that's like, and I think there'll be some good skills and things that I can learn from doing that. In fact, my son, I had the opportunity. He actually went to grad school and has got his Master of Divinity, and then decided that he didn't really want to go into full-time vocational ministry. He fell in love with the coffee industry, and he ended up running 8 or 9 coffee shops for an entrepreneur, and he loved it. So he was doing until he realized, gosh, I don't like having to work every weekend, because if a store loses an employee, then he was the one being called to go do that. So he calls me up one day and he says, hey, Dad, can I come work for you? Because I have some dreams, and maybe what you do, I can learn and get some new skills and meet some new people and network. And I'm like, wow, what a dream. Not something I ever expected. But he really showed me that this next generation is looking for those opportunities to get well-rounded. Now, I love this idea of a career portfolio of lateral moves and stretch assignments. There was a time when I implemented a temporary coverage and a program where if there was going to be a maternity leave or some kind of leave, or someone left and we just needed to fill it until we found the replacement, we would take a top talent and we would parachute them in to that role for upwards to 3 months. And hopefully it was international too. So we started giving these younger employees some experience and exposure into lots of different places. Pretty inexpensive. It's not a full reload package, which if anybody's overseas relocation. It can be super expensive, especially from the tax side of things. So I think that was a really great opportunity to engage the employees and show that yeah, we're going to value and we're going to invest in you. So how do we lean back into some of the tools that have worked? Well, I've used talent teams. You might have heard them as tiger teams, or action learning, frankly, where you pull together some top talent, you give them a really challenging business problem, and you say, go solve it. And so I think there's an opportunity to really capture the essence of giving these individuals some experience and exposure across the board. In my career, I had the opportunity to start in manufacturing. I moved into finance. I did IT before I landed in HR, which gave me this well-rounded understanding of how businesses are run. And so talent teams can do that for your employees and give them a real step up. And they give them the skills that they're going to need in 2030 for your organization. And of course, I call it M3, move, motivate, or market. You might have heard it as a buy, borrow, grow, or the really boring strategic workforce plan. Right? This is what do you need? Who do you want to move to be able to fill that role? Who do you need to train? Who do you need to motivate through training and other experiences? And what roles or what skills do you actually need to go to market for? That you have to go buy, because it's just going to take too long to fill. I remember a few years ago when the organization was starting to think about batteries. And so I was doing one of these M3 plans for the organization, and I was working with the chief technology officer, and he's like, we got these batteries, and I'm like, well, do we have anybody with battery skills, understands the battery market? Well, no. And this was like 2 years before we were really planning on getting into it. I said, well, let's go find someone and hire them and bring them in and let them bring us into the future, because they already have the connections and everything. And so we actually went and searched and found some really great talent. And of course, that's when markets kind of took a dive, and so we didn't end up hiring them. 2 years later, sure enough, we started getting into battery, and we were way behind the curve. So here we lean back to kick forward into the future for career growth. Now, careers and how we structure careers and how we build these portfolios for our employees really is part of our culture, which leads me to the next, the fourth key talent strategy. We historically have been an office culture. I love the idea that the office, that physical environment, does contribute to the culture. Well, we are now a culture without walls. So culture is so important. Talent may be borderless, but culture needs to be defined for your organization. And it is so important for us to do that. Especially with, if you are national, time zones. Fortunately, in Dallas, we're in Central, so the time zones aren't terrible. But if you're international, then certainly you're dealing with some of that. But work styles, communication, leadership, all of that is so important, especially if you're in much more of a virtual space. So I have learned that there are 6 kind of strategies that you can leverage when you are dealing with a kind of a digital culture. I want to focus first and foremost on leadership, accessibility, and communication. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden my company was we were virtual. All, I don't know, 6,000 employees were virtual, and so I convinced our CEO to do a 5-minute quick update on a weekly basis. We just off the cuff. I still remember him in his ugly orange hooded sweatshirt, and he'd come on and he would just kind of riff or talk for 5 minutes, and I can't tell you how engaged that brought the whole company. Simple 5-minute video. Probably took him 20 minutes to think about what he wanted to talk about and then to film it. And then maybe another 30 minutes for someone to edit it and send it out. So 1 hour of time a week that engaged every employee during a time when things were uncertain. Now, of course, that lasted for about 6 months. Then he got tired of doing that and things started getting back to normal. But that accessibility was so important during that time. And I would maintain it's important all the time. But there's other things, things like intentional onboarding. We can now engage employees well before they start, right? There's some portals that we can create. We can put videos and everything on board, and I don't know, the lawyers might be able to tell me if there's some legality and do we have to pay employees to do that. But in general, we can actually do that. I think we can also create a virtual buddy, culture buddy, if you will. Someone that's going to be engaged up front from the very beginning that will help that new employee understand what's it like to work in the culture, especially if there is some of those things that are really just not sure. Because if you don't have a water cooler to talk to or talk around, how are you going to do that? So lots of virtual things. Living the values, putting them into your performance management system, digital storytelling, lots of short videos. This generation loves their TikTok videos. So you just need a 30-second, 1-minute kind of video that will engage individuals. And so how do we lean back? Well, engagement surveys. You can then really do pulse surveys. And surveys nowadays are real time. You can leverage AI to do the analysis of it. So that's where that third workforce can really make a difference. And then whether you love them or not, performance management, it all comes down to managers, right? The managers are giving this constant feedback, talking to their employees about the culture, about the values, and making sure that they are delivering. Now, my last talent strategy is, historically we've been compliance focused. Now it is more important than ever that we are trust and human sustainability focused. And sustainability not from ecology or an environment perspective, but from an employee perspective in the business. And the number one thing that employees want to know today is, can I trust you? Right? How many of you trust the media these days? How many of you trust your government these days? How many of you trust your leaders these days? Well, unfortunately, the reality is that trust for employees and companies is at a low. Actually, Gallup just came out with a new report. If you haven't seen it, there's a huge amount of data in there. We could probably spend a couple hours just on it, but employees are disengaged. The employee engagement statistics are at an all-time low in the US, which is driving fewer hours worked. So if you think you're getting more productivity because someone's working from home, it's probably not. They're probably actually working fewer hours. And there's burnout. Managers are the ones feeling the burnout the most. And we, as HR and as companies, have not done a great job training managers. Last time I saw a study on this said that only 30% of managers had any kind of formal training. And that was a couple years ago, so it may even be less than that. We have got to do a better job of pushing that, hey, we've got to train our managers to be ready to manage and to know how to manage. And the workload's not going to go away. That's why I'm so excited about AI to help with that. But there's good news in all of this is our employees can trust us if we can engage our employees in a positive way. Those numbers will mitigate burnout. Burnout's not necessarily associated with number of hours worked. It's how are they feeling about the work and the organization. So how do we lean back? Management training. And we've also got to figure out how to management wellness programs, we haven't really cracked that code yet. So that's something that I think we really need to figure out. I love management training. And I have one client that I've done some of that, and we've seen 15% increase in management and leadership capability when we've done these kind of in focus 6-month kind of trainings. So I know my time is short, but I want to let you know that you really are in charge of the future. You have the opportunity to leverage the most important asset that is not depreciated. It's not a depreciating asset, your people. It is your competitive advantage. And I really, really believe that if we lean back into all the good things HR has brought to the table, but kick forward so that we can swing quickly into the future, we're going to find ourselves in a much better place. And before I wrap up, I want to just thank a couple of people. Megan, I don't know if Megan's in the room. She's done a great job putting this on, so I want to thank Megan. I want to thank Ken, Jeff, and Aaron for inviting me. It has been an absolute pleasure. And so I will be giving away free books, copies of my book, The Talent Advantage, out there. I'll be signing, and I'd love to talk and meet every single one of you. Thank you so much for the time today.